Welcome back. Today I've got something exciting. Blizzard have added character interactions that specifically definitively point towards where we're going next, and it's actually more exciting than I was expecting. Patch 11.07 and 11.1 will likely not be revealed until the Warcraft Direct, which we expect to be this November, but keeping with how Blizzard just want the narrative to flow more, for the game to be more cohesive, 11.05 is already teeing us up for that content. That said then, let me tell you a story. Ansorex War is finished. At the Cathedral, we stopped Xal'atath's most immediate plans, and for the Arathi, that basically means a degree of freedom. Yes, Beledar still darkens, but no longer do they fear the complete destruction of their new home, and that means they see opportunity. Now, we've already re-established trade between them and the Earthen, and 11.05, we've actually began to see that bear fruit. Venturing into the forge grounds of Dornegal, we find Hallowfall engineers, and they're doing more than just mingling. You see, nearby we find Vokret, who is the market reeve of the forge grounds, and she's chatting with Valetna Thuradale, who is an Arathi airship engineer, and something sneaky is going on. The pair are talking about a construction project. They say that it's going to take vast supplies, and Valetna even let slip that airship captain Lancecat is pleased with their expedited progress. And we can quickly deduce just how secret this whole thing is. Valetna accepts new tool shipments, right? But she turns down the offer of more engineers, and that's apparently because the Arathi standards are really strict. Then we hear a line that suggests things are a little bit of a ruse. She says she'll tell Vokret where the ships are going, but she'll only do it behind closed doors. So, whatever it is, it's secret. It's only built by the very best, and of course, Dornegal is a city, so word does spread quick, but not specifics. Going around, we hear two Storm Rangers gossip. They're essentially wondering aloud if Merrick's, the council ward, will object to this new project. But either way, it at least seems he's in talks with them. Building an airship is one thing, but this is a massive project that's going on somewhere on the surface, and if Lancecat is interested, then surely it must be a military project. And if they're undertaking a journey like Vokret says, then they're going to need multiple airships, so it must be some sort of airbase. I mean, the characters emphasize the vast resources required, and if it's an airbase or any military adjacent presence, no wonder Merrick's is talking with them. This would be the Arathi establishing a military foothold on his island. These are the Arathi who come from an empire that openly brags about conquest through steel. That's going to be a little bit worrying. But for now, at least these Arathi are our allies. So let's say Merrick's trusts them. Where are they going? There are two answers to this. One is long-term, the other is short-term, and the short-term one is directly substantiated with new dialogue. And to help us do all this and afford the time for all the pretty shots, here's today's sponsor. They're going to get you from idea to done fast. They're Squarespace. And when I needed a job site a while ago, when I needed a game landing page for what we were doing, I went to Squarespace because they just make getting the job done simple, it's fast, it's cross-device, all while looking fantastic. That's because their award-winning templates, they get you started with a strong foundation, but even better, Blueprint will guide you through building your own template, and they actually with that have a proper, good, thoughtful AI implementation. And once you've got the big picture laid out, their block-based editor makes crafting your site so simple. You need no web development skills, and that means you can just focus on design and content. And if you want even more control, their Fluid Engine feature is an absolute game changer. It just lets you move things to where you want them granularly while still having it be responsive across screen sizes. It's incredible. And everyone should have a killer website that represents them. A good first impression helps you with jobs or even just hosting your portfolio or your side hustle. And of course, if you want business, they have got you covered. And you can do so much more. Be that courses, be that bookings, maybe you're teaching people online, maybe you're running a hairdresser. You can run it on Squarespace. And most importantly, it's all of that in one package that is easy to use, which means that you can focus on the bit that actually matters, achieving your goals. So if you go to squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming, you can get your site built today with a free trial. And then when you're ready to send it live, you can get 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain with code Bellular Gaming. Location 1 will definitely happen at some point, and it is home. Remember, these Arathi came here on a mission. Their mission is to find the Emperor's vision, to establish a presence, and then to report back. Now, parts 1 and 2 of that plan worked, but of course, they got trapped in Hallowfall, and they lost all of their mages. Now imagine if those mages had have survived, if a portal to back home was established. if that was the case, then would the Empire's vast armies control the land? I would say probably. At any rate, the narrative potential here is quite clear. Characters like Faerun, in dialogue that shipped with War Within, suggest that home, while she does seem to have liked it, is not a welcoming place. To put it bluntly, the vibes of these Arathi are rather menacing, and I'm sure they wouldn't be that happy to hear that we slaughtered the Priory leaders. Now, of course, Faerun and some of the Hallowfall expedition would take our side, which basically means clear drama. That means content. I think it'll happen, but not immediately. You see, Location 2 is new, and it's much more likely. Walking around Dornagal, we overhear two goblins having a chat. Ricket, a goblin that we first meet in Wrath of the Lich King, is talking with her friend Skagit, who travelled with us to Draenor. She tells him of a call that they heard when they were sailing, right? So they hear this call. Her crew follow the call, and they come upon a sight they did not expect. An island adorned by a big crystal. Now, when this happened, a storm loomed. The atmosphere turned eerie, so sensing risk, these goblins decided to turn back. Now, both of these goblins are part of Gazlo's grease monkeys. Ricket even mentions that Gazlo is getting them a zeppelin to fly back to the island, potentially to mine the damn thing for profit. And that means we've also got the workings of a proper goblin expedition. Now, we don't know for sure that this crystal on the island is Beledar, but I think it's hard to imagine that it won't be. I mean, the chances of a second giant crystal that calls out to people does seem to be pretty slim, and it makes sense that this is just the top tip of Beledar, the bit that we don't see from within Hallowfall. And where things heat up is that according to some earthen gossip that we overhear, this discovery has reached the ears of the Arathi. Putting two and two together then, we can infer that the journey they are building this fleet for won't go homeward, that instead they'll be going to this land, going to this crystal. That makes sense. It would always be their priority. Remember, their goal was to establish a presence wherever the Emperor's vision was found. If this is the tip of Beledar, then it's exactly that. And that means that for the likes of Captain Lancecat or even General Steelstrike, who I imagine, are our friends, they would put their overall mission ahead of our friendship, and they certainly would not stand for goblins getting there first. Even less so if the goblins plan to mine it, because it to them is a form of holy object. Let's get meta for a second, put this in context. We know that 11.1 being a major WoW patch has got to have both a raid and a new zone. Now, having Beledar on an abandoned island sounds like a perfect patch zone. I mean, we'd see the impact of both the light and the void in nature, and at the same time, we'd be building and defending fresh encampments. You'd have the goblins there, you'd have the Arathi there. A lot of things just naturally make sense. Maybe we've got some antagonistic Arathi people. Maybe the venture company could act as enemies to the goblins. There is so much narrative opportunity there, actually, and then opportunity to learn the truth behind Beledar while Xalatath takes a little bit of a backseat in the story for now. There's just tons of inherent drama in the race to this crystal and what the different characters will do when they get there. And I certainly know that I want as much Arathi drama as possible because I think they're basically awesome. As for the raid then, we already suspect it's going to be goblins. That's because back before this expansion released, we found an icon labeled Goblin Raid, much like other hints we've picked up in data mining, things like the Emerald Dream outdoor gear and the Zaralet Cavern icon back in Dragonflight. So with that in mind, it was no surprise when we went to Azkahet and ended up finding Gazlo and a whole bunch of goblins. And if Blizzard introduced those characters in 11.0, it was obviously because they planned to use them. You see, while the Earthen, the Arathi, and the Nerubians were the main focus of the story, goblins were spread around everywhere else, and that actually started before launch with a short story called The Goblin Way. And in that we learn that Gazlo has got a grand ambition. He wants to reform goblin society. He kind of wants to kill the Galliwick's sheer greed, profit before people, but mostly also short-term profit over long-term profit. He still is a goblin. He wants to do goblin things, but he doesn't want short-termism to kill everything. And because of that, he's absolutely not a fan of the venture company's flagrant disregard for the world. And that does mean that the long-running goblin abuse of the environment, which has been a recurring theme from vanilla onward, well, that is finally addressed here. Where the short story makes it clear is a little line where Noggenfogger shoots back at Gazlo. He says, "Sustainable, what are you, a shaman?" And this lets Gazlo snap back to say that Azeroth herself is out of patience with their ways. Now, if you connect that, the way a shaman was mentioned, to the elemental agitation across the Isle of Dorn and in the deeps, and then we just have overarching themes absolutely everywhere. Connect, of course, that with the goblin quests in Ashkahet, and we have got obvious upcoming plot. They don't look that important at first glance, but some of the side quests in Marl do set up our future. You see there, with our help, Gazlo puts a non-violent end to the Venture Company's shenanigans. And what happened is they basically dug their way into Ashkahet from somewhere else. They arrived there independently of us, and Jenny Boonbuckle, the leader, is basically just trying to make money at any cost. Now, we do stop her. Gazlo's more diplomatic ways do mean that he ends up taking her out to dinner and learning what she's all about. And when he does that, she reveals that she's from Undermine, which is, of course, the goblin home city deep under the now destroyed Isle of Kazan. And if just one mention of the goblin capital wasn't enough, shortly after Gazlo takes us aside and he basically says that we'll need to have a talk about Undermine later. With this stuff, it very much looks like later is going to be now. But that wasn't all for the goblins. We also met the Darkfews in the Ringing Deeps, and these guys seem to basically be Xalatath-pilled goblins. They had no follow-up, but I've got to imagine there will be some soon. And finally, when we were there, we saw this caved-in tunnel entrance. And that tunnel entrance looks suspiciously like a phasing entrance, like the ones that took us to Zaralek Cavern. And even more suspiciously, if you just face directly at it and open your map, you do see that it points roughly to where Undermine would be. And for our final tidbit, it's just a quick walk over from there to Opportunity Point. There we see unaffiliated goblins showing up to mine something of value, and putting a few things together, it does appear to be Kajamite, which, if you know goblin lore, will get your head going, but that's a story for another day. The concept is essentially this. The Arathian goblins race to an island that we all believe holds Beledar. Whatever goes down there likely then takes us to Undermine, where we perhaps deal with the Venture Company, right? It's the home of the Venture Company. Perhaps even there are forces there who are under the influence of Xalatath, so maybe those Darkfews will end up being relevant. Maybe we see Arathi armies fighting goblins. Of course, at this stage, we can only guess as to how Blizzard will connect these things together, but to me, it does sound quite exciting. The idea that we could go to a patch, walk right up to Beledar, and see exactly what it is. That sounds cool, and at any rate, the Arathi versus Goblins showdown may show us the first hint at what the Arathi Empire are truly like. After that, of course, we will have one more patch. There will be a patch 11.2, and I think I have a fair idea of where that's going to go. And to understand that, well, you gotta learn about the Haranir and the Rootlands. If you want to know what's up, check out this video next.